Welcome to Disruptive Successor, a show for next generation leaders in family businesses and entrepreneurs who want to disrupt the status quo and take their existing business to a whole new level. We all know that what got us here isn't going to get us there. This show will provide inspiration, advice, and resources to help you create massive impact. This podcast is sponsored by myself, Jonathan Goldhill, and my company, the Goldhill Group, where we provide coaching for growing companies. I'm Jonathan Goldhill, and my purpose is simple: to guide entrepreneurial leaders in family businesses towards more freedom and fulfillment. I want entrepreneurs to get clarity around the changes that will make them and their businesses more successful so they can experience the same freedom I've enjoyed in my life. Our proven practices challenge business owners to think differently about their business and how they're running it, and quite literally become game changers in our clients' companies. Learn more at thegoldhillgroup.com website, where you can schedule your free strategy session. Hi, it's Jonathan Goldhill, and welcome back to another episode of the Disruptive Successor Show. Today, we have another financial wealth wizard with us. Barry Rutten is an industry contrarian who is wary and often critical of conventional financial wisdom. He is the co-founder and managing partner of Wealth Defense Financial Advisors, which focuses on the unique needs and goals of business owners, as well as high-income professionals, upwardly mobile families, real estate investors, and those entering or already in retirement. Barry has over 35 years of experience as a certified financial planner and has developed and refined a proprietary process for creating collaborative and cooperative financial and retirement planning engagements with clients. So that's what I'm going to welcome Barry to the show with, and we're going to get right into the subject. So welcome to the show, Barry.
Good to be here, Jonathan. Looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah. So we're talking to family businesses here, and my clients are typically what I call the next generation leader. They're the successor. Hopefully they're the disruptive successor, but they're not too disruptive, but just disruptive enough that they're going to improve upon either the products, the process, the service, the technology, so that they can grow the business 2 to 10x over the next 2 to 10 years. Because there's more families in the business that they have to support. The challenge I find lies in several different areas. Sometimes you don't have a successor who's really that talented. They don't have the entrepreneurial drive that the parent had that was running the business. Right. And so the father, as it is typical, is thinking to himself, I don't really trust Junior to take over as well. I mean, he kind of had it handed to him on a silver platter. And yet the father might be somewhat dependent upon the son or the daughter really stepping up and continuing the business in such a way that the income stream of the parent can be ensured. My friend Jim Muehlhausen, who was a guest on a previous episode, called this half retiring. Like, ditch the stress, keep the business. If it's giving you a 33% return on your equity, right, why sell it? So I'd like to talk a little bit about that situation and how you approach that with a client, as if it's a real case scenario. And then I'd like to then move into, if we could, talking about how to actually go about transferring equity or ownership or control, or whether to do it not at all, Right. So let's start with the first case. You with me?
That's a lot to unpack.
I know, right?
I think if I can do this from memory, several issues there. One, at what stage or phase do you in your business and in my practice actually come alongside the business owner? Are they early? Are they middle? Are they late? What is the age of the adult child? Son or daughter?
All right, let me fill in some details as you're going along. So the son or daughter is 25 to 40.
Okay.
The age of the parent is 60 to 70.
Okay.
The age of the business is probably at least 10 years, maybe 15 or more in business. Typically, my clients are construction industry clients, so they've had this business, and maybe it's even into its third generation. And I mean, you know what they say about generation to generation. It takes 3 generations to go from shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves, right? Where literally the second or third generation has squandered all the money, and basically it's like starting all over again. So there's a lot of issues to think about.
I think the most common things that I see just as problematic. I'm going to go on the assumption that the junior is actually working in the business and has some familiarity with the business.
Yes. Good assumption.
So, we get into issues of, has the business owner groomed them, informed them, kept them in the loop, really educated them about actually running the business, or just had them go through a series of roles or tasks in the business? Because it's a difference between working in the business and on the business.
And my experience is mostly the situations that I'm called in, because I'm a coach, is they haven't really groomed them that well. They've taught them technical stuff, field stuff. Like I work with a lot of landscapers, and some of the parents are very knowledgeable about, the size of pipes, or the size, the amount of water flow, but they're not up on new ways of running a business.
Right.
So,
and, it's everything from, making decisions about deployment of capital and those kinds of things. And I think the biggest issues that I see are, number one, a business owner has put their blood, sweat, tears, and life energy into this entity. And depending on the person, they may have internal struggles with just letting go. So the more I tell Junior about how to run the business, the more I'm maybe, feels like I'm giving up control or setting myself up for an exit I might not be ready for. I think you have to make a differentiation between operating the business as if you were going to sell it without any requirement to sell it, and let that younger person get up to speed on those kinds of things. How do we improve this business? And I love the title of your book. And I think that, that fresh set of eyes, that fresh energy, that fresh perspective, maybe more comfort with technology, allows that person to maybe have an open mind of, maybe they're not as connected to this is the way we always did it. And they're more open and receptive. I think the financial challenges are many business owners, the extent of their thought process about their business is, in many cases, it's their largest by far asset.
Yep.
And very likely by far their largest retirement asset. And the extent of their planning may have only been, at some point I'm going to want to sell the business, and I think it's worth a whole lot of money, and I'm going to get a big check, and I'm going to ride off into the sunset. And that's it. That's the extent of the planning. And then they go back and, they're taking phone calls and putting out fires. And they lose the opportunity to have a much more intentional transfer. And that doesn't have to be cold turkey. That doesn't have to be all at once. That could be periodically over time. It could be in pieces. And of course, there's tax benefits to the piecemeal or periodic transfer of pieces of the business to the next generation, just purely from a capital gains and estate tax standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
So as an example, if you were to create a certain kind of LLC or family limited partnership, something of that nature, the business would be valued. So any business should always, first and foremost, have a business valuation done, say every 3 years. Depending on the business, every 3 years. You need to know what this thing is really worth. And I think a lot of owners have a perception that the business is worth more than it is.
Mm-hmm.
They may not be aware that within their industry, there's a commonly accepted multiple, but within that range, they could be either be at the very low or the very high. So in businesses such as the ones you consult with, are the jobs just, hey, I need to get the next job and the next job and do the next bid and the next bid? Or do they have a whole stack of customers under annual service contracts, which would be recurring revenue and make the business more valuable? So there's things you can do to run the business to make the business more valuable for the sale for the owner and a transfer. So once we have this business valuation, then the question is, well, if eventually I want my son or daughter to own the business, but the reality is we don't have a crystal ball. We don't know anything about our own health, our longevity. That's all an unknown variable.
Sure.
And we say, you know what, maybe it makes sense for me to start putting parts of this business in their hands now, but gosh, I still want to retain full control. We can start transferring pieces of that business, but because it's a minority stake, we can actually, for the purposes of gift and estate tax and transfer taxes and things like that, devalue those minority units.
Sure.
And effectively transfer more wealth at a much lower tax rate. So that's a good example of a planning technique that you might want to do over the span of 5 or 10 or 15 years and not wait all to the end and transfer the full value and have Junior get hit with the big hit all at once. And it also, if you begin that process, it's probably going to move you in the direction of helping train your family member in more of the operation of the business and the strategy of the business, not just the functional performance of the task of the business.
Okay.
So I think that's pretty critical.
Let me ask you if either you have a bias for or against gifting equity, and or whether you have clients who generally seem to fall into like, I do gift equity, I don't gift equity. What's your thoughts on that?
I think most people, how do I put this, who love their children and want the children to take over the business, are really okay with transferring minority ownership. But to me, it always comes back to the control issue. They don't want to transfer control until they're ready to transfer control. And essentially, when Junior has proven that he or she can really operate the business and feel successful. And to your point, when you earlier were unpacking the scenario, is there a market for this business? Is there somebody who would buy this business? Should the business be sold outright? Or if the next generation acquires the business, what does that mean economically to the owner? So you were mentioning earlier, does it really make sense for me to completely unplug from this? Or should just I make a deal with Junior that we will operate the business a certain way, or you'll operate the business and then I'll get a cut for X amount of time, sort of an earn-out basis. Or maybe in perpetuity. But that brings up planning issues. Well, the skill, like you said, the skill of the new operator, their capacity to expand, or their risk of devaluing or even reducing the income of the business by poor management and poor decisions, and how involved does dad get, in back and forth. So I think there needs to be an operating agreement essentially when the younger generation starts to be more involved in the business decisions. And that's what I always encourage. If we're going to do this transfer of value, however we do it, there needs to be some security for the business owner. And again, what if I transfer the business and then the son dies or becomes disabled or gets divorced? What if in the divorce settlement, the wife's like, yeah, it's a great asset. I'd like half, please. And now are they forced to sell this business under fire sale conditions? So that's where things like a buy-sell agreement come in. And I know you're familiar with that term.
Yeah, right.
For your listeners, it's simply stating the structure under which a business would be bought or sold and by whom. So there might be a first right of refusal for the son. There could be a respected competitor that you would actually want to be the one to take over your accounts. And there's 5 or 6 major well-known scenarios under which you could be in oh my God, what do we do now? That's death, disability, bankruptcy, divorce. And then just, I want to get out. I don't want to have anything to do with this anymore. And so a buy-sell establishes the value of the business, the formula under which the business is valued, so that when it comes time to either make a sale under calm conditions or urgent conditions, we knock down the disputes that are going to normally arise if these things aren't pre-established. That's where the big fights come in, which is, what business valuation method and who gets the first crack at this? And what happens if there's 3 kids and only one of them is suitable to operate the business? Do they have an economic interest in their parents' assets? How do we do what's called estate equalization. Johnny gets the business, but Bobby and Sarah might get a life insurance policy equivalent to the value of the business at the time of death. In a lot of cases, they're like, awesome, tax-free death benefit, no strings. I don't have to run this business. I don't have to get my hands dirty. Awesome. And that might make dad feel better about doing that. So very, very unique per family. You really have to get in kind of the motions, not just the numbers.
Do you find, has it been your experience? Let me rephrase that. People like you and I, coach, consultant, financial advisor, we have a set of best practices that we could assess any one of our prospective or current clients with. And we know what is best, like in terms of they should have all these things in place. But like, what % of the clients that you see, do they have these different items in place? The ones that come to me and that I have the most impact on are the ones that don't have any of these best practices. And I imagine similar with you, they have very few of these. I mean, maybe you're tightening up but sharpening. But I find entrepreneurs who have built up a business that's still largely based around them, their persona, their contacts, their
cult of personality, I call
cult of personality. Yeah. I find that those people are the slowest to implement these types of estate planning, buy-sell agreement, putting their assets in trusts. Is that your experience?
Yeah, it's a very, very small minority who's even aware of these issues. And I don't judge that at all, because I have a very low expectation based on experiences you've had of people even being aware of the issues, let alone having done the planning. So if they are a researcher outside their day-to-day, if they're like, I want to know or learn how to do these things, if you know what to go looking for, you'd find it. But predominantly, most people don't do it. They put it off because it's not urgent. It's just important. It's not urgent until it becomes urgent. And what I find is that people, what I ask clients to do is very much along the doctor model. Allow me first to do an examination. Let me see what's there or not there. It's essentially, let me take a look at the blood test results and see what's there or not there. Then come up with a diagnosis. Oh, you're doing this really well. Keep doing that. You're not doing this at all. We've got to start doing that. And you really should stop doing this because this is not beneficial to you. And so sort of a start, stop, keep going model. And then there's going to be a prescription or a recommendation of, hey, in this order, in this priority order, this is really leaving you exposed and dangerous. That could be something like, you don't have a business overhead expense policy. And so all the overhead of this business, if your revenue stops for whatever reason, your ability to continue to make payroll, to cover debt just goes away if your cash flow stops. So that would be more of an urgent issue versus something like the estate planning side and the asset transfer side of things. But very, very few people that I've come across, again, like you said, they're just busy being entrepreneurs. They're busy being business owners. They're hustling, they're marketing, they're selling, they're trying to hire, they're trying to retain employees. And so, deal with regulations. So that's why people like you and I exist, to come alongside them and say, hey, let me take this burden off of your shoulders, but let me make you aware of really two sides of the game. We need to avoid financial loss. We need to prevent the preventable. It makes no sense to take an economic backstep or get hit with this big, devastating financial event that's completely preventable. Once we've got that defensive position in place, then we can focus on how do we achieve financial success? How do we capture more of the wealth, or more of the income, I should say, from this business and turn that into wealth in whatever form that looks like? How do we operate the business in such a way that it can be that much more efficient? Are you missing pieces of the team, for example? As you pointed out, a lot of people are really good practitioners. Did they get any training on leadership? Did they get any training on hiring? They may have missing pieces. And I'll often refer and introduce them to people like you to say, hey, I know you need to do this, but Jonathan's the guy who's going to get this done for you. But when Jonathan goes and figures out how to make you more money, I'm going to show you how to capture it, keep it, multiply it, leverage it, transfer it, retain it, all those kinds of things. So it's very symbiotic. But I kind of have a soft spot in my heart for the entrepreneur, and there's just too many hats, too many roles to be good at everything. And so we want to fill in those gaps.
So you've been doing this for a long time. I think 35 years said in your bio.
Makes me feel old.
And I assume that as you get more mature, more successful, more knowledgeable, you go upstream in terms of the size of the clients that you're dealing with. Maybe that's a false assumption.
To a certain extent, and I'll be very transparent, I'm not a big corporate guy. Like, I know that there are advisors who seek out like the Fortune 500 or the Fortune 1000 company. I'm much more aligned with the guy who maybe has, dirt under his fingernails or,
sure.
Bootstrap this business. And I want to be close to the decision maker. And because I see the connection between the business owner and then the business owner's personal side, literally just before we got on this call, I'm speaking to a client who's got a HVAC, heating, ventilation, air conditioning business. He inherited it as a very small asset from his father, but has grown it tremendously to where he's in the position to sell it for many multiples of millions of dollars, which allows him now to transition into other phases of his life and work and such. He's still going to work for the entity. But what was really interesting was this man is very smart, very well read. He's one of probably 5 clients who even knew what EBITDA was, earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation. So, belongs to a coaching group for other business owners. So great client, lots of gaps and holes still.
Right.
I hooked him up with my attorney, and knowing this sale was going to take place, we set up a certain kind of trust that's probably going to save him $5 million in state taxes on the transfer. And so, but really kind of getting to know him and his family and, how he feels about things. I think there's a more intimate relationship when the business is maybe sub $50 million in revenue. And I think, 25 million in revenue, whatever. I think when you get into I have another client, it's an $80 million trucking company in California, but I get to talk to the CEO, and I've helped him with his personal, I've helped him with his financial. As soon as there's this big C-suite kind of a thing and multiple layers of vice presidents, I'm kind of out. I don't want
understood. But are the issues the same for a 2 million, a 15 million, and a $50 million company? I mean, do you apply that same level of due diligence and assessment, or do you figure the $2 million guy, he just needs to have a basic package? The $50 million guy, he needs to have like a really concierge custom level, because there's much more complexity.
More complexity, more opportunity. Obviously, with that kind of capital, that kind of cash flow, there's just more things that they can do. But, the $2 million guy needs, for example, if he's financing vehicles, financing trucks, and he's paying, the financing costs for those, which as we're recording this conversation, the financing costs are going up. There are alternate sources of financing that can actually keep his capital available to him and not tie up his capital, and actually be at much lower rates and still be able to deploy that capital in multiple ways. So a lot of times people are doing things that are like easily fixable, easily correctable. When you get to the really large size businesses, there it's really about, are you aware of all the opportunities available to you? And, so for example, the client I was talking about, the HVAC guy, the opportunities were different when the business was, maybe worth $20 million versus now it's worth $50 million. Just different things that he can do. And frankly, they're more appealing as, in this case, a takeover target, if you will, than, does somebody want to buy the $2 million business? I don't know. But the process, honestly, I think is the same, just the checklist is longer. Meaning it's that same examination, diagnosis, prescription, a lot more issues for the large business, just as a matter of scale, more employees, more accounts, more customers, more, they probably have their hands in more pies. But one of the things that I really try to make sure we do is make sure that the business and the business owner are doing each of their sides optimally. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times those really big businesses have some pretty high-powered employees working for them, super high value employees, essentially called key employees. And their loss would be devastating to the business. So a lot of times we talk about key employee retention and compensation that may not exist when a smaller business has 4 or 5 office employees, mm-hmm. as opposed to your sales guy who's bringing in 23% of your revenue. We've got to lock him down, sure. and give him some benefits that are discriminatory, meaning that they don't apply to everybody, but it essentially creates a golden handcuffs so that those people never leave and feel they have more skin in the game and more participation. And so I think you end up seeing more opportunities to improve things, maybe even 1 or 2 or 3 levels below the CEO or ownership level.
Yeah, I just was on a call with a client, and they're looking at doing this, what I call half retire program. My friend Jim wrote a book. I told you about it. And I still warned him, though, that he was looking at depending upon this key employee who in the last few months came to him and said, I got offered twice as much money to go work for somebody else.
Yep.
And so you're going to forego putting a system or process dependent business for keeping it a people-dependent business. Currently, it's dependent upon the owner, right, to be involved. And now you're going to, if you want to pull yourself away from it, you're going to depend upon this guy who threatened to leave. I mean, there are some challenges there for sure.
But he's also a human being, right?
Right.
By things not of his own choosing. Again, he gets divorced, he gets disabled, dies, he decides he wants to go live in Tibet and wear a robe. Mm-hmm. Things you just literally have no control over. And again, these are, I think, the blind spots that businesses face. And again, I think bring in that set of eyes, your eyes, my eyes. Yep. That's really where the value comes in. And I don't think it's necessary to be Superman or Superwoman when it comes to owning your business. I think it's the smart thing is to stay coachable, stay receptive, stay open to new ideas. And there's a lot of opportunities that people just completely walk by and miss just because of lack of awareness.
Yeah, Barry, let's talk about that. You brought up a term, blind spots. I know that's something that's hot on your list of talking points, and it's hot on my list as well. One of my better blogs, I think I told you the other day, was around blind spots. So what are some of the blind spots that business owners overlook that guarantee big legal fights with partners and nightmare financial issues with spouses and heirs?
Well, we definitely touched on some of that, but I want to kind of restate it in that blind spot arena. Mm-hmm. Definitely the lack of a business valuation. This can cause so much trouble, especially if the business owner is forced to sell, especially by a death or something or disability, because no one knows how to actually assess this business. And so therefore the family often is reliant upon the value of this business at a death, and there's no way to figure out what it's worth. If there's partners involved, this is where it really gets problematic. If there's no formula for valuing the business and no process for both giving the partners the opportunity to acquire the owner's share, right? So I don't want to be in business with my partner's spouse. She doesn't know anything about the business. What I want to do is be able to make her whole, give her piece of the business. Mm-hmm. Where does that money come from? Often the capital of the business is tied up and deployed. That's where that buy-sell agreement comes in. But a buy-sell agreement stating the value of the business without providing the resources to buy out the other parties, that's what's called an unfunded buy-sell. To make it a funded buy-sell, we use things like life insurance and disability insurance and sinking funds and things like this to make sure the funds are available to effect a smooth and orderly transaction so the owner's spouse gets full value of the business, and then the partners can continue on functioning. And oftentimes we will put a policy on the owner that will pay to the business, not the spouse.
Right.
If we lose the services of an owner or key employee. So again, for those of who are listening to this, these may be areas where you're saying, "Oh my gosh, we have that situation, but we haven't really addressed it, and we're at risk." And so that's what makes them blind spots.
Yep. So they would have 2 life insurance policies or more, one on themselves personally for their spouse and one on themselves for their role in the business. So that
Payable to the business, yeah.
payable to the business, so the business could buy out his or her equity.
And the nice thing is the business, that particular premium is tax deductible to the business because the beneficiary is the business.
Right.
And things like those key man policies, if they're structured properly, we have terms like split dollar, and I'm not trying to drop jargon here, but the business can enter into arrangements with the employees to share in how the premiums are paid, how the cash value, if they use that kind of policy, is accessed, where that policy becomes, I like to think of plan A and plan B, Jonathan, where plan A is everything goes great going forward. And maybe the business is actually able to give the employee a multi-million-dollar asset at retirement because we can actually just transfer the cash value of that policy to them. But the plan B is if that key employee dies, the business might get several $1,000,000 to replace the value, the economic value of that employee to the business. And what's really interesting is that more and more these things are being used at the highest levels of college sports to compensate coaches. And you'll see it in their contracts where they actually enter into agreement with the university. And the university might pay 7 years of premiums, very high premiums on a very large policy. And then the coach basically has access to the cash value, and that cash value can be turned into a tax-free income stream for their retirement. And it's a way for the college to compensate them beyond the salary component. But the death benefit, if the coach were to die, is payable to the university because now they're going to have to pay out on the coach's contract and they need that protection. Well, that same idea. So the coach generally is going to pay a small amount of tax on the sort of the economic value of that premium coming to the policy. And so they'll pay a few $1,000s a year, but for a massive economic benefit. And more sports coaches are including this. Well, business owners can do this all day long. That's traditionally where it came from. And this way they can actually have another blind spot. And this is one that I kind of get on my soapbox a little bit about. Business owners will set up things like 401k plans to attract and retain and reward employees, which is awesome. And they have matching contributions, and it's great. You're employee centric. It's awesome. The problem is whatever the IRS giveth, the IRS taketh away or limit. And so there's a limit to the contributions. And so for somebody under 50, it's like 20 grand a year. Well, if you're a $500,000 a year income earner, setting aside $20,000 a year is not going to build up enough assets to replace that cash flow. And then when you bring inflation into the picture, it's even worse. Well, the good news is the tax code's predominantly written for the business owner, not the W-2 wage earner. And so there are specialized plans, both within what's called the qualified plan market, the 401k market, and outside of that, with special arrangements exclusively available to business owners to sock away vastly larger sums of money, in some cases with very few limits and very few restrictions, so they can sock away a lot more of the profits of the business, build that up, and store that. And that's what I like to convert cash flow to wealth. Yeah. So instead of you working for the income, now the assets generate income for you, and you're in a much better position. And then when you add in the horsepower of maybe the sale of the business or the transfer and getting a cut of the business's income over time, now they're in an especially good position.
So these are defined benefit plans, qualified pension plans,
qualified and unqualified.
Okay.
And so there are ones that actually fall outside all those code sections and enter into other code sections that are just uniquely available to people who own businesses, and they can actually use the same strategies for, say, their top 5 key, sales and operations people, and legally discriminate. And they only use that term in the sense of, you can, in a 401k, for example, you have to cover everybody. You have to make contributions for everybody. But in these other kinds of plans, you don't. You can actually say it's only available for this management tier and above. Right. It's good to be at the top, right?
Gotcha. Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, Barry, tell us a little bit about your practice. It's called Wealth Defense Advisors. Why Wealth Defense?
So yeah, I guess picking the name of your practice is a pretty big decision. And Wealth Defense Financial Advisors, I was really starting to think about how I feel about my role with my clients. And I've always been frankly attracted to the word wealth and the meaning of the word wealth, again, as opposed to income. And over time, you form these opinions. Like you said, the more time you have in the saddle, you form these opinions. And there's so many threats to people's money, simple and obvious ones, but maybe not addressed as well as they should be, like inflation and taxes. But then, other ones where, we're certainly experiencing that now with massive, drops in the stock market. Well, what people have been sort of sold a bill of goods, to be perfectly honest, by Wall Street, which is, hey, give us your money and we'll use it. And, oh gosh, sorry, you just lost 50% of it. Well, if that happens right before or right when you retire, for example, that can literally ruin your life.
Sure.
We call that sequence of returns risk, meaning if you just happen to be unlucky that you retired in 2008,
right,
or in the spring of 2022, and you thought you had X and now you have half of X, that's pretty problematic. And then I'm very frustrated by the fact that many advisors continue to use what are called the tools of accumulation during the phase of life when somebody's entered the time of what's called distribution.
Yes.
And end up saying, oh, let's take a certain amount of income from your investments. Well, when the investments go down, you're having to sell more shares to get the same amount of money in your checking account, which means you've permanently sold things at a loss. Those dollars are off the table forever to be able to generate future income. And it's next to impossible to make up the recovery because you just have less players on the field. Well, that's completely unnecessary. So the retirement plans we put together are very straightforward. We take your assets and we drop 1 to 3 years worth of income into a safe, liquid, sort of staggered or laddered approach where, we've got 6 months in cash, and then we have some short term and medium term and longer term. You're always drawing your income from this very safe, very stable place.
Yep.
But then we take a chunk of your money and we put into something that kicks out regular cash flow, much like a pension, to replenish that account. So as the money's coming out the bottom, we're pouring it back into the top. So the glass always stays full. But in many cases, we only need to use about half the money available to do that. And we can take the other money and we can send it out 10 years into the future. And if we do things right, it'll grow back to what we started with. So let's say I had $1 million. I can take 500,000 and turn that into my what I call my buffer account replenishment tool. And I can take the other $500,000, let investments do what they're supposed to do, which is be left alone and grow. And in 10 years, I might be back to the same $1 million again, and I can repeat the process. And I've never exposed my money to any risk of going away prematurely. And that's why that whole wealth defense idea is where the name comes from, is once you've got it, my job is to protect it.
And those buffer investment replacement tools, are we talking annuities? Are we talking dividend yielding bonds? What types of instruments are we talking about?
I'm not trying to hedge here, but I do try and follow the prescription without diagnosis is malpractice.
Okay.
But many of the things you're mentioning are part of the tool set, meaning what we want to use, for example, you use dividend-based stocks. Dividends are very, very, dividend-based stocks are very safe because it's real money. It's not like you've heard of the greater fool theory. I buy something for X and maybe somebody's going to buy it for X plus down the road.
Yeah, that's called crypto.
That's crypto. That's wishful thinking, right?
Right.
I want to bid. The reason you buy stock and put up with the variable nature of the return is to stay ahead of inflation. That's it. Many people, especially during the 80s, were lured into this idea that stocks could consistently give you like 12 or 20% returns. That's crazy. That's not the historical norm. It's more like 7 or 8. And so what we want people to do is not try to keep getting home runs and grand slams, because if you expose your money to being able to go up 35% in any one year, it can go down 50% in 1 year. The problem is, mathematically, it takes way more return to recover from a loss. And it could take years to do that. Meanwhile, the clock is ticking and time is elapsing. And so what we really want to do is say, let each tool do its job. Let income producing vehicles produce income. Let growth producing vehicles produce growth. And time, I'm very much based on timelines. Let time solve the problem. And I'm just going to give you a visual that even if you're listening, you can grasp. Take a string. If I grab both ends and push it together, it's going to go like this, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if I grab the ends and pull it apart, it's going to flatten or straighten. So the more I lengthen the time that I can hold my investments, the safer they become, the more stable they become, the more less likely I'm going to suffer losses. However, in this day and age, with the increased volatility that everyone's seeing and experiencing, and I think is going to continue for the foreseeable future, we're trying to take some of the chips off the table and use tools that allow people to grow their money and earn really high levels of market participation when things are good, but step off the roller coaster ride when things go down and just kind of stay flat. So I might start out at $100,000 and maybe I get credited with $8,000. Now I got 108. In the normal investment world, when the market goes down, I'm going to now go down and maybe I'm at 98,000. I've lost money. Well, there are tools that you can use that allow you to just stay flat. You still have 108,000 at the next year. Oh, wait, the market's back. I keep what I've earned. I started a new higher watermark and then I go up again. And so we basically get the best of the peaks, but none of the valleys. And this can be done both on the accumulation side and the distribution side, because the marketplace has frankly responded with tools that didn't used to exist.
All right. We're not going to get into depth on that one because it could take us in a whole other direction based on the investing that my money manager is doing for me, which is based on buying ETFs and actively managing them and having risk controls so that we protect the downside. All right. So as we wrap up here, it's very obvious to me that what we're talking about is way beyond what you're going to get from the drive time personalities and entertainers, of the world that are talking about things that are probably geared towards a more, middle income employee, professional, perhaps. Right. There are some guys that are talking to owners, but there really aren't anyone that I know of that is speaking to an audience of business owners the way you and I have been talking this last hour. So
I think
where do people find guys like you? I mean, how do they
on shows like yours?
Yeah, right.
I think what you're referring to is what I call the financial entertainment industry, and that's the people on radio and TV whose real job, just to be really clear about this, their real job is to sell advertising.
Right.
And therefore the goal is to be controversial or have an enemy to rage against. And I'm sorry, but you just cannot get good advice in a 30-second snippet. And the producer is basically screening the calls for two things: crazy questions where the host can kind of yell at the person for being dumb.
Right.
That's very salacious and interesting for listeners to, how bad is he going to beat up on this person?
Right.
And then somebody who actually has a legitimate question, but it literally has 15 seconds to unpack it. And then they still get the standard advice that the last 27 callers have gotten. So there's no doubt in my mind, the reason I really appreciate the invitation to come on your show is that you're talking to exactly who I want to speak with. And that is business owners who I think are more savvy. And I think that's the reason there's no show for them. And I think there's the reason they're not hopefully listening to that garbage is because they're legit. They're really, they created something out of thin air, from scratch. And they have this valuable enterprise and they can't be playing around with, and I agree with you. I think it's maybe for a certain segment of the market. And maybe occasionally the advice is good, stay out of debt and don't use credit cards too much. That's all good. But that's not going to get one of your listeners to where they need to be. And I think the idea is to seek counsel where you have gaps in your arsenal, your toolbox. And so you and I have spent enough time together where I know you have some amazing tools in the toolbox and amazing processes to get them thinking in different ways, strategizing different ways, executing in different ways. I'm pretty much exactly the same way. I want them to think a little differently. I want them to implement a little differently and engage a little differently on other smart areas of their financial life. So it's very synergistic. And again, anybody who even found your podcast is probably the kind of person that we can really help, or at least confirm. Again, what are you doing right? Keep doing it. What might you be doing that's dangerous? Let's stop doing that. And then what do we need to start that you're not currently doing that would be beneficial to you? Good stuff.
Well, I call guys like you as one of the 4 horsemen that all entrepreneurs should have, an attorney and an accountant who are distributing and protecting value.
Proactive.
But the wealth advisor who is compounding that value and helping them also to protect their assets. And the business coach is driving and creating value. So super important. Everyone should have a boat, a business owner advisory team, and they should have guys like you and me in or on their boat. So
I like the boat, and I'm a boater. I have 2 boats. I really like that analogy.
I know.
I might have to steal that.
I know, exactly. All right. So Barry, you're up in the Seattle, Washington area. Is that right?
Yeah.
And you're like boating, lots of great waters up there to go sailing and motorboating.
I'm not patient enough to sail. I'm a power boater.
Got it.
Sailors have skills. I just go, I want to go there.
Gotcha.
Fast, you know?
Yeah, no, you got to be pretty good at that as well. I know. All right. So they can reach you at the Wealth Defense Group.
Let me actually give them a better resource. Same idea,
please.
But more specific. If they go to wealthdefensegroup.com/Bobs, and that's just like the guy's name with an S at the end, BOBS.
Okay.
It's Bob's is business owner blind spots, what we were talking a lot about before.
Gotcha.
So they can actually go do a sort of a self-assessment. I think there's 10 questions.
Right.
Some multiple choice answers, pretty easy. There's a box after each question where they can kind of make comments, ask questions. And if they're interested in having a conversation about those blind spots or any of the other aspects that we talked about today, I'd be more than happy to have a conversation with them. So wealthdefensegroup.com/Bobs. And I know you'll put that in the notes.
Yep, we will. So Barry, thanks so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So folks, you know the drill. If you like this show, please share it with others. Give us a really good rating on your listening podcast app of choice, and make sure that you're doing what you need to do to protect the growth of your business and the value. Don't lose value to the tax man or the IRS. Talk to people like Barry Rutten who can help you to keep that wealth and not let it evaporate. All right. Thanks, everybody. Over and out.
This podcast is sponsored by myself, Jonathan Goldhill, and my company, the Goldhill Group, where we provide coaching for growing companies. I'm Jonathan Goldhill, and my purpose is simple: to guide entrepreneurial leaders in family businesses towards more freedom and fulfillment. I want entrepreneurs to get clarity around the changes that will make them and their businesses more successful so they can experience the same freedom I've enjoyed in my life. Our proven practices challenge business owners to think differently about their business and how they're running it, and quite literally become game changers in our clients' companies. Learn more at thegoldhillgroup.com website, where you can schedule your free strategy session. Thank you for joining us on the Disruptive Successor podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, review, and share with a friend who would benefit from the message. If you're interested in picking up a copy of my book, Disruptive Successor, go to disruptivesuccessor.com.